Kana, welcome to the broadcast. Glad to have you here. Kana with Red Blind Media. Um, I met you a few years ago through a mutual friend,
That's right.
and in the marketing space. And so your focus primarily is online digital marketing for companies, a lot of different size companies. Actually, you work with a lot of different size companies. But we've kind of like developed this relationship over the last few years with as it relates to the marketing for my schools, and I've seen a huge change just from what we were doing before versus what you guys are helping me with and doing for my schools. Um, and so I'm really excited to talk to you about digital marketing, kind of bring your expertise to the table here as far as how you guys are getting the results that you're getting for music schools. And you guys have also kind of developed sort of a marketing system and plan specifically for music schools, which is also, I think, really cool because you kind of niched yourself to that as well. So,
That's right, David. Thanks for having me on here. It's all your fault, David. We started with you, working with you a couple of years ago, and it's really opened a lot of doors for us and led us to develop a program that we built specifically for music schools to take their media spend and make it really effective in online channels, digital advertising, and we see with all of our schools just a really repeatable success plan to get them to grow and get new students into their schools.
cool. Yeah. So we're going to dive into all that here today and get into some really tactical and specific ways that people can take right now the knowledge and the information that you guys are doing and implement it immediately into their school. So that's going to be great. But what I want to start with is I want to start with like just this idea of online marketing right now. It can feel very overwhelming, right? So like as a non-expert in the digital marketing space myself, I mean, I probably know more than a lot of people do, but even that, it feels very daunting when I look at like Google literally changes things daily. Like things are constantly changing as far as the way the algorithms work and all that. So it's like if you're talking to a music school owner right now and you're saying, and they're asking you the question like, where should I be? Like if just top priority, top level stuff or high level stuff, where should people be online if they're just getting started with online marketing right now?
Yeah, it's a great question, and like you said, like it's always changing, and like I have a hard time keeping up with it, and that's my full-time job. But the good news is for music schools or really any business just trying to get established, there's really two main players that you need to be on, and that's Google and Meta's platform. Meta being Facebook and Instagram. There's a lot of other channels out there, and we continue to test and explore those channels with some success. But like bang for your buck, like Google and Meta are just pure and simple better than anything else that's out there.
Okay. All right. So Google and so that's interesting because I mean, somebody could argue, well, what about TikTok? TikTok is like taking the world by storm right now, right? And you've got all these articles about like TikTok's the next big thing. Everyone should be on TikTok. If you're not on TikTok, then you're not getting, you're not maximizing your marketing spend online. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've tested TikTok with a number of our clients, and I mean, you're right. It is a channel where a lot of people are using it. It's really easy to get in front of people and get them looking at your assets, your materials. But like again, bang for the buck, Facebook is still better. When in TikTok, the format that it's in with essentially reels, short form video, where you're swiping from one video to the next. It's easy to get in front of someone. It's hard to get someone to click and leave TikTok and go to your website. Instagram and Facebook have essentially the same product, short form video that you can scroll through, but Facebook Meta has so many other placements that they can run your ad, not just in the reels. And so we found like newsfeed ads are still kind of the bread and butter for Facebook and Instagram. You're able just to capture people's attention a little bit better and get them to click out to your website to kind of check you out and do a little bit more of a deep dive. It's just hard to get people to leave TikTok.
Right, yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is people, when they're on TikTok, they want to stay on TikTok. So unless you're
Yeah.
selling something directly while they're on TikTok, then it's difficult to get them to move from there to a place where they're ready to buy on your website.
Yeah,
That makes
exactly.
sense. That makes sense.
Mhm.
So we're talking about Google and Facebook. Now, obviously, within those, there's a lot, right? So, like even with Google, I mean, you don't just have Google. You have the SEO aspect of it. You have the Google Ads. You've got the Google Business Profile. You have all those things. And so, again, for somebody who's just starting out, what should they be focused on? What would you recommend they focus on? If we just take Google, for example, what would be a good place to start?
The lowest hanging fruit in this space is probably search ads. And when we talk about Google ads, their platform is actually really large. It's much more than just search. They have a number of different display channels. YouTube is a huge platform that's all managed from within Google Ads. So when we talk about running Google ads, there's a lot of different campaign types there. I'm mainly talking about search ads, and I'll talk about another campaign type here in a minute, I'm sure. But yeah, if you're just starting out, we talk about this idea of measuring performance and ensuring that you're able to track and report on your ad spend so that how effective any one channel or campaign or ad actually is. And calculating this return on your ad spend, your return on investment, you need to make sure you have effective conversion tracking set up and that you're reporting whenever someone either fills out that lead form or enrolls in a trial lesson, whatever your conversion action is, you're reporting that back to the ad consoles. But if you're measuring that, you should be able to really easily take a look at all of your different campaigns and make those decisions into what campaigns should be getting more spend. Because at the end of the day, if you want to maximize your dollar, and so you're going to put the dollars towards the campaigns that are performing the best. And if you're just starting out and you have a small budget, search ads are probably the way to go. And when I talk about search ads, this is people searching for piano lessons, guitar lessons, music schools, music instructors near me, like those type of non-brand searches where someone is very qualified. They're looking for a service that you have to offer them. There's a pretty high chance that if they click on your ad, that they're going to fill out that lead form or sign up or check you guys out.
So you said piano lessons near me or music lessons near me. Are there certain search form terms that you've found to be kind of universally successful, or does it depend on the area of the country?
No, there's from a geography standpoint, not really. It's pretty much the same. When setting up search campaigns now, like it used to be where you would get very specific about the search terms and back in the day, we would set bids at the search term level. So we're like plugging in our keywords into the ad console and we're saying, okay, like this is a little bit of a better keyword. So I'm going to bid, 20 cents instead of 15 cents. And you got all your bids at the keyword level. Like those days are gone. The ad platforms are very much algorithmically driven now. And so what that means is Google is going to, and I hate saying this because it feels like some of what I used to do in my job, like those skills are just like gone now. It's just a wasted skill set. But like Google's better at figuring out what search terms to serve ads on than I am. And again, if you have good conversion tracking and you're reporting those conversions back to the ad consoles, very quickly they're going to learn what audiences, what types of people are good prospects, good people to show ads to. And so when setting up your search campaigns, Google has a couple different match types. They have from a very specific, you can do exact match, only show my ad if someone searches this exact term as I've written it. They have phrase match, which is I'll allow some close variations, but try and keep this pretty tight to what I'm putting in there. And then they have broad match, which is, hey, like anything that is remotely relevant to, you know, this topic, go ahead and serve an ad on. And again, like I used to hate broad match. Like I'd only do phrase and exact, and broad match was just a good way to waste money. But again, now with these algorithmically driven platforms, you can, broad match is the way to go. And so all you have to do really is just set up very broad topics: piano lessons, guitar lessons, music schools, music teachers, you know, anything that you think is somewhat relevant at a topical level, just plug those in from a broad match standpoint. You're going to get some junk initially. We typically see, if you're starting from scratch and you're building these new campaigns, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for that conversion data to feed back into the system and for the system to really start to perform for you. So like we tell all of our clients, hey, give us 3 months. The first month is probably going to suck. We're training the algorithm. We're teaching the system. You're going to start to see some wins in month 2. And by month 3, you should be flying.
You know what I love about what you're saying, and I think this is probably one of the most common issues for a lot of people, especially when they're first getting into this level of marketing, is tracking the results, tracking like how conversions are coming in or where they're coming in, and actually being kind of maniacal about that. Like it's because if you don't know where they're coming in, then it's like you're kind of shooting in the dark. Like you really don't know. And of course, the algorithm, then you're not feeding the algorithm the correct data or any data. And so it's also kind of like just sort of, you know, going along, and it's not really able to get smarter. So tracking, can you talk about that for a second? Like, just like, how does somebody track, and what would you recommend people use for tracking?
Yeah. So this is interesting that you're asking me this now, because like we said at the start of the hour, it's always changing, and we're in the middle of this whole process changing right now. So typically how you would set up tracking is figuring out what your conversion action is, whether that is, like I said, a lead form or someone completing a trial booking, or maybe it's making a phone call. And the way that you set up tracking for all these different conversion actions, it differs a little bit, but essentially we like to use Google Tag Manager, and Google Tag Manager can watch for those conversion actions when someone completes that form on your website. Google Tag Manager, you can then connect your Facebook tags and your Google ad tags and your Google Analytics tags, and then fire that conversion event whenever someone takes that action. Google recently has announced that they are starting to phase out third-party cookies in their Chrome browser. And Apple's kind of done a little bit of this as well in Safari and on their iOS platform, kind of limiting what we're actually able to track. And so this is maybe getting into the weeds a little bit, but the way that we're going to be able to track performance going forward is to essentially take all the first party data that we gather. So name, email address, phone number, zip code, for all your leads, and performing like an offline import of that data back into the ad consoles. Because if we're not able to track with JavaScript using like Google Tag Manager and your Facebook pixel and your Google Ads pixel, like that kind of stuff is going to start to go away. There's Facebook and Google as ad platforms are providing advertisers ways to still inform them on who is ultimately converting and you know, giving us their information from a lead standpoint. And so I could spend a lot of time talking about actually how this is accomplished. But as long as you're gathering that customer data, the prospect data, there's a way to feed that back into the ad consoles and say, hey, you know, Bob Hope here filled out the lead form. I'm going to tell the ad console, hey, this person filled out my lead form. It was on this date at this time. And the ad console, Google is going to like, oh, I know that person. So I'm going to and I know that they clicked on one of your ads. I didn't see it happen when they filled out the form, but now you're telling me that they did. I'm going to link those two together and connect those two and report that as a conversion.
So, I mean, like listening to you explain that, it is pretty techy, right? So for those of you that are tech nerds out there, then this will be great. But I think it's instructive to know that this is kind of a process, right? This isn't just like, pull up a spreadsheet and type in a couple names. I mean, there's a process that has to be followed here if you want to maximize the results on Google so that the algorithm gets smarter for your school, for your business specifically, right?
Yeah.
This is specific to your area and your school.
Yeah, and that's increasingly important. Like you can run ads without conversion tracking, and like you'll get some qualified traffic. Like if you're running search ads, people searching for piano lessons, like some of those are going to be qualified, and they'll fill out the form, and you'll get leads. But it'll never get better. And in a competitive landscape, you absolutely need to be tracking those conversions and reporting them back to the ad consoles so that the ad consoles can get smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've talked about Google being number one. How about Facebook? What is the low hanging fruit with Facebook? If you're telling somebody who's just getting started advertising on Facebook, what would be your first recommendation?
Yeah, so Facebook is, we've heard from a lot of music schools that, hey, I've tried Facebook and it didn't really perform that well for me. Like I've had some success with Google, but I'm not so sure about Facebook. Facebook has, if you do it right, it can be better than Google. For some schools, like we have the majority of our budget in Facebook because it performs so well. And there's a couple things with Facebook that you just need to be cognizant of. And this is kind of similar to how I was just describing, like Google, you used to be able to, pull all these little levers and really tune your campaigns back in the day. With Facebook, I mean, you still can be very selective about the audience that you serve these ads to. Like I can go in Facebook and say, I only want to serve my ads to moms who are 25 to 40 who are interested in music education and who say they have kids and are in this income bracket. That you can get very specific with the profile that you serve on Facebook. But in 2024, you are much better off essentially running ads to a broad audience of pretty much like no exclusions. And just by virtue of passing that conversion data back to Facebook is very quickly going to kind of key in on who your audience actually is. Like you may think you know who your audience is, but if you limit Facebook and say, I only want to target this very narrow slice, it's not going to perform well. And that's like one of the biggest issues we see when we come in and work with music schools who have tried Facebook in the past. They have all this hyper specific targeting and it's counterintuitive, but you just have to say like, look, like let Zuckerberg take the wheel on this one and just trust that the ad platform will get better over time if you're feeding it conversion data and let it go and find the prospects.
That's very interesting. I wonder how much of that has to do with AI. Do you think maybe some of the intelligence on the back end, the algorithms, right? Some of that is being driven more by AI than it ever.
Oh, it's all AI. It's all machine learning now.
Yeah.
There's no one in the back end of these systems like tweaking and tuning this based on like all this data coming in. It's a big black box. It's data in, results out, and no one really understands all the inner workings. It just knows that they've built the system to optimize for results.
And it definitely does seem to be getting smarter, which is why it's so, like you said, it's counterintuitive. Let's not put any demographics on these, targeting. We're just going to make it wide open and let the system actually come up with the best.
Yeah. And so
the best targeting.
The levers that we're actually able to pull on Facebook and the biggest things that we can do to ensure success on Facebook have to do with the ad creative. And when we talk about creative that performs on Facebook, Like we see a lot of schools come in and they've designed an ad that might look like a flyer that you might see posted up somewhere. There's a lot of text. It explains the offers, yada, yada, yada. That kind of stuff just doesn't work that well on Facebook. Like if you're scrolling on your phone and you're just, browsing through the news feed and you see like an image come up and it has a bunch of text on it and it's very, salesy copy, like your brain automatically, you don't even think about it. Like you just recognize that as, oh, that's an ad. I'm getting sold something, and you keep scrolling. And so the content, the ads that we find work on Facebook are a lot more organic, a lot more candid. What we've seen work really well is there's a couple things. It's just photos of students playing instruments, and you can shoot this with your phone. Just get photos or videos of your students just playing the instrument in the classroom setting. That right there is it might seem boring to you, but it's interesting when people see this on the newsfeed. They're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like they're playing an instrument. What are they doing? Like thinking in the back of their head, oh, I've been thinking about getting lessons for my kids. I wonder where they're taking lessons at. So students playing an instrument is one. Getting music school owners to almost like do like a tour of their facility. And this can be like, again, you can shoot this on your phone. Like the more organic, the better, honestly. Like get your phone out, like say, hey, I'm so-and-so owner of this music school here. Let me show you around and, walk through the door with them. Here's my lesson spaces. Here's where my kids practice. Here's some of our practice rooms. Here's our facilities. We offer lessons in XYZ instruments. We'd love to have you come on down, check us out. That kind of stuff works really great. And then getting testimonials, usually from parents, sometimes kids too, just saying how much they love taking lessons there. That type of voice, when it's not coming from a brand, it comes off as a lot less salesy, right? Like you're going to trust and listen to a peer a lot more than you would a brand or a company. So testimonials are a great way to get your message out there on Facebook.
So a lot of what you've just been describing is visual, right? So like not a lot of text, not a lot of copy, but mostly videos and photos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And that makes sense. Might be a little bit counterintuitive for some. But yeah, I mean, I think for us, one of the things I'll just add, kind of piggyback onto what you were saying. I feel like for us, especially more recently, we've had the best results on Facebook while when we're promoting some type of event. We've started doing some of these open houses and some of these different things. When there's a live event that's like an upcoming event, a local event, something like that, and we've promoted that, I feel like we've gotten some good traction on that. And we always have very high conversion rates for people that show up to those open houses because they're taking the time to show up and walk through. So like local events on Facebook seem to be performing well too. But okay, so we've talked about Google, we've talked about Facebook. What would you say for let's break apart the different size schools, because we got all different size schools. Some have huge schools, like 1,000+ students. Some are more kind of mid-sized, 100 to 500 students, right in that range. And then you've got a lot of schools that are under 100 students, where they have one or two teachers that work for them, but they're the primary teacher and maybe looking to scale up and grow into something a little bit bigger. So like starting with that small group, or that group with the smallest schools, let's talk about like an online marketing strategy. Okay, so like let's say you're sitting across from a school owner that has under 100 students, and they're wanting to like build a online marketing strategy. What would be some of your initial suggestions for them?
Yeah. If you're a really small school and you're kind of starting from scratch, there's a few things that I would consider. Like first is just making sure that you have a good online presence. Like people are going to research you. Like if they see an ad, or a lot of times people might search again like for piano lessons near me, and a couple of results are going to come up. They're going to check all of them out and kind of compare them and see how they all stack up. So make sure you have a good website, something that is clean and professional and really communicates what you're bringing to the table, what makes you different than anyone else out there. Try and get as much social proof as you can on there so that you appear like legitimate. Like people just want to know that you're like a real business, that if they call you or come in, that someone's going to be there, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of businesses out there that it can sometimes be hard to tell, like, is this even a real thing? Is this a person? So getting your website set up, getting your Google business profile set up for the same reasons I just described. When someone searches for you, you want that knowledge panel to appear on the side of the Google search results. It's got your business name, it's got your hours, it's got your website, your phone number, all your contact information, photos, all of that stuff. That helps legitimize you. And start building reviews. If you're not asking your current client, your students or your parents, for reviews, get them to leave Google reviews. That stuff is huge, especially for schools that are just starting out. And then, if you're ready to dip your toe into really this kind of idea of, okay, I'm going to really try and grow this with dedicated media spend. For schools under 100 students, again, the lowest hanging fruit, start with search ads. That's where I'd kind of start.
Okay, so you had some really big stuff here. So you talked about having a website, which we kind of skipped over that at the beginning, but that's a really big point, right? Like you got to have a website, and it needs to be a website that actually converts. That's the whole purpose of the website, is to convert traffic to paying customers. And so that could be a whole nother discussion and a whole nother topic, but the website is huge. It's very, very important. You guys actually do some work with that, I know, and you helped me out quite a bit with my website. And so like having a high converting website is everything, and it has to be cohesive with your ads that you're running, and there has to be tracking and all that between those. So again, that's like a whole nother conversation. But so website, you hit on number one, you talked about having a Google profile. So that's, and then you kind of liken it to a website. So can you talk a little bit about that? So it's a Google profile. What's the difference between a Google business profile and just running Google search ads? Maybe let's hit that.
I mean, there's some overlap there. So your Google business profile is essentially just you establishing a presence online with Google. So Google has a tool for business owners. It's their Google business profile, where you're able to basically self-identify, hey, yes, I am a real actual business. And Google will mail you a postcard with a code on it that you have to punch back in order to verify that, yes, I am at this address. Once you have that Google business profile set up, you have a lot of control over your presence and how you appear on Google. This is especially important for people who are doing all those near me searches that are going to display a map in the search results. For you to get your school, your business to appear on the map in the search results. This is getting into SEO territory a little bit, but reviews, both quantity and quality, are like one of the number one factors that'll influence if your business appears on the map. And then proximity to where someone is searching is obviously the other big factor. And if you're struggling and you don't have those reviews yet, you can pay to essentially get your business listing in the map. That's getting into a new campaign type that I haven't talked about yet. If we've been talking about just search so far, and when someone searches piano lessons or piano lessons near me, having your ad appear in the search results. Google has some other campaign types specifically for local businesses to get your local presence up, like in Maps results. And then they have some other, I can talk about that now, or we can punt that. That's probably a tier 2 strategy once your school has a couple hundred students.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. But I wanted to kind of hit on that point of like having a Google business profile is so important that it should literally be number two after you have your website. You should have a Google business profile.
I mean, it's probably number one. Get your business profile up first and then
Yeah.
start working on your
Yeah.
website. Yeah.
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 That's the most important part. So
Mhm.
okay, so you got your kids. They've got their website up. They got their Google business profile, Facebook page.
Yeah. Having a Facebook page isn't as critical as some of these other items. Like
Okay.
you can run ads with essentially like a blank Facebook page, because the amount of people when they see a Facebook ad, maybe some of them will check out the Facebook page, but most of them are just going to click on the ad, which will send them to your website. So
Right.
it's not as important to have like an established Facebook tried to make that a thing for a while. It's not so much a thing anymore. Google is really kind of the key player in this. Like even Yelp these days isn't really that much of a thing anymore. Google kind of owns the market for establishing a local presence on the internet.
For local search. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, but it's very helpful, especially for somebody who's just getting started and they're trying to
Yeah,
figure out what is the set of priorities that's going to get me the highest value for my time, right?
yeah. No,
So,
making a Facebook page is easy. Like, yeah, go and do it. It's just not priority number one for us.
sure. Okay. So Google business profile, website, and then we'll tie in Facebook page along there, but that's not a high priority. At what point do you start running search ads?
I mean, as soon as you can, as soon as you're ready to grow. I mean, we worked with a school that we started working with them in August last year, and they were starting from scratch, brand new school, 0 students. And we talked to them a few times before we started working with them, uh, trying to kind of set expectations. Like, hey, this is, I mean, I'll always say, like, there's a risk. Like, we can't guarantee results when we're running
Right,
ads. We have a very good track record and we're pretty confident in our results, but we can't guarantee this. Like, you're a brand new business. You're taking seed money that you have saved, your hard-earned money, to try and start this business, to start this school.
right,
Yeah, it's a little bit of a risk, but we told them, like, hey, if I were in your shoes and I were doing this, like, I would be spending money as fast as I can to get that initial batch of students, so that you have some cash flow coming into your business. And
right.
like I said, the first month was bumpy. It was rough. We had a couple really panicky calls, but we told them, like, it's okay. Like, I promise things will get better. Month 2, it got better. Month 3, they were flying. And by the end of the year, like I said, they started in August. By the end of the year, they already had 100 students. So
Wow.
we were adding 15, 20 students a month.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's from zero.
And that's from
That's
zero.
like
Mhm.
that's with no reputation, no
Yeah.
students, no presence
Yep.
to 100 students by the end of the year. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so that's for somebody who's just getting started. Now let's kind of transition to sort of that mid-sized school where, maybe they've got 20, 30 teachers, um, you know, 200, 300 students. Um, and frankly, this would be a pretty large chunk of people, probably, especially people that are listening to this broadcast. What would you? And maybe they've got, you know, already got the business profile, Google business profile. They got a website. Maybe they're sort of just throwing up ads whenever they can. What would your strategy be if you came into that business?
This is
And what
where
would it
then
look like?
you would really want to start stepping on the gas on Facebook. Hopefully, you already have your search ads established with Google. Now you're at the size where you as a business, you can probably dedicate some time to working on creative and producing videos specifically for Facebook. Um, and I gave a few examples earlier of students playing music, school tours. There's so many different ways to get content out there, and ideas for videos that can run as ads. And like, the rule of thumb is like, hey, is this a video that if I were to post this on like my organic social page, on my Instagram page, on my TikTok page, like, are people going to be interested in watching this? If the answer is yes, it's really likely that that is also going to make a great ad. Like we just need to put some dollars
Mm.
behind it and get that out to more eyeballs. So like just a few examples. This could be, filming like one of your teachers giving like a few tips on like how to practice, or like, hey, like talking to the guitar teacher. Hey, how easy is it to play, whatever the popular song on the radio is right now? And it's like, oh yeah, it's just 4 chords. Dun, 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 dun. Now you know how to play that song. Like that type of like organic content that's like super interesting that people would want to watch. Like you throw that up as an ad, and then people are just going to naturally, if they're in that mindset of, oh yeah, I have a kid and I want to enroll them in music lessons, they're like, oh, well, this sounds great. Like, yeah, let's get them started. So yeah,
So
for
a lot
those
of
mid-sized
creative.
schools, get going on Facebook, start producing content and creative.
Okay, so just spend more on Google, and probably, especially if they're a casual Google user, where maybe they don't know all of the algorithms or all the search terms or whatever. This would be something where they could spend more on search ads on Google, but mostly they should be focusing more on the creative aspect on Facebook.
Yeah, and for schools, most schools that we work with are local, and they have a market that they generally serve. It's like a 10-mile radius, usually around where the school is actually located. And so there's limited inventory. There's only so many parents or students that you're going to reach with your ads before it just becomes like unprofitable just to throw more money at reaching the same people over and over. And so on Google, with search ads, there's a metric that you can look at in the ad console. It's called search impression share. And that'll tell you, hey, for the areas, the zip codes that you're targeting, how many times is your ad being shown when someone searches one of the keywords that you've set up to bid on? And so, for example, if your search impression share is 60%, that means your ad is being shown 6 out of every 10 times that someone searches for one of those terms. So that's a signal to me that, hey, there's probably a little more room here to scale budgets up. Like I want to get that search impression share up to like 80 or 90%. Like you'll never hit 100%, just the way that the auctions work. But if you're at 80 or 90%, that's when it's like, okay, I'm saturating this pretty well. I'm hitting everyone who's searching for this kind of stuff. Let me kind of take my efforts elsewhere. So search impression share on Google search. And then on Facebook, you can look at frequency, like how many times is the same person seeing the same ad in a day, in a week. And when we talk about frequency, like we don't want to do more than like 3 times a day with the same ad creative. If it's getting to that point, then that's a signal to us that we're probably saturating like our Facebook. But for most schools who are spending, maybe 2, 3, 5,000 a month on Facebook, like that frequency, it's like a 1.2, 1.5. Like most of the time, we don't really hit that saturation point until we're spending into like the tens of thousands of dollars. So there's plenty of what we call inventory out there.
Yeah, but you're saying that there's a huge opportunity for schools around that size to maximize Facebook more than what they're currently doing, and usually that's done through creative, like photos and videos that are of their school, walkthroughs, tours, interview a teacher, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. After getting your base established with search ads, then the next logical step is to really start producing creative and get on Facebook. There's a third campaign type that I haven't really talked about yet, but that we typically run for most of our schools, and that's on Google. It's called Performance Max. And Performance Max is interesting. It's Google's attempt to really let AI do all the driving. And so with Performance Max campaigns, you provide it headlines, descriptions, some images that it can use, some videos that it can use. You can link it to your Google business profile, and it's just going to go out there and combine all those assets into hundreds of different ad formats that it can show on any Google property. So the Google search page for sure, but also like Google Maps, on YouTube, on the Discover feed, in Gmail, and on Google's huge display network. So it's a weird campaign type in that like you can provide it all these creative assets. You won't really rotate that creative out nearly as much as you will on Facebook, but it can be a good kind of additive layer once you've done search, once you've done Facebook. Now I just want to like raise my awareness and get people seeing my business on the internet a lot more. Like then you can start running Performance Max.
Okay. All right. And that's it. I mean, because I know we've talked about this just with my own schools, just kind of like we've tested those out. And Performance Max is a fairly recent thing, right? Like Google just kind of has rolled this out within the last.
They rolled
year,
it out
right?
at the end of 2022, and most advertisers got it early 2023. Yeah, so it's still pretty new. It's still evolving very quickly.
Okay, so we've talked about sort of the mid-sized schools. Now let's talk about large schools. So, we're talking schools over 500 students, whether they have one location, maybe they've got two locations, or like in my case, 3 locations, or maybe they've got like 15 locations. Going into a situation like that, obviously it's a much more established system. They've figured some things out in terms of their marketing, at the very least. So how would you come into a situation like that? What would be some of your first indicators that you would be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, once you're at that size, like we would still check and see, hey, are you maximizing Google search and Facebook? That's where I would start. But then, once you're at that size, and maybe for very large schools, like you said, like 15 locations, like if you're like a strong brand and you have that brand presence in like a region, like maybe not just a city, but like a whole region, one interesting channel that's available would then be YouTube. And YouTube is interesting in that it's similar to like I was talking about TikTok earlier. It's hard to get someone to kind of click out of YouTube. It's a great awareness tactic. It's really strong on the creative side. Like you produce videos for YouTube, you can get like really great messaging out there. But what's really cool about YouTube is all of the targeting. You can set up targeting on search terms very similar to how you would with just a standard search campaign. So you can tell YouTube like, hey, I just want to show, my ads for people who are searching for like music education terms, like how do I learn how to play guitar? Because like YouTube is a goldmine for like how-to videos, right?
Right.
If searching YouTube for how do I play this chord on this guitar? There's a chance that maybe you can be like, hey, you can try to learn on your own from YouTube, but like come on in for lessons. And like that's messaging that a lot of our schools like will have like on their website. It's like, why would I pay to take lessons when I can find the information free online? It's like, well, there's a whole host of reasons. I mean, I'm sure you know, David, like you're just not going to get the same quality of education trying to teach yourself than you would with a dedicated teacher. So you can kind of work on getting some of that messaging through.
Well, and I mean, the truth is, if that were really true and people would just went straight to YouTube to learn, because the truth is, all the information is on YouTube. You could literally get a master's degree on YouTube if you wanted to. And yet there are still music schools. And yet there are still, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of students every year taking lessons all around the world. So it obviously hasn't replaced the in-person. So that's very interesting. So you would really more focus on the larger scale schools on the kind of, I guess what you could call brand advertising, which is where you already have a strong brand presence, but you're just amplifying that.
Yeah, it's kind of the classic marketing funnel, like awareness, consideration, action. Like when you start getting into those really large sizes, then it might make sense to start, getting to some of those awareness tactics. And like I say YouTube, but man, honestly, like Meta is such a killer platform. Like I'd be hard pressed to find a school that has maximized that to the fullest extent.
It's really amazing too, because Facebook has been, I feel like just over the years, I keep waiting for it to fall or to
Yeah.
fail. Like everyone keeps talking about how Facebook's getting smaller and how people are leaving Facebook in droves and how it's just, the kids aren't on it anymore, and so it's just. But it's like, yet it still performs well. It still is the leader.
Yeah, in the industry, there was a lot of like back in 2022, there's a lot of talk like, hey, has Facebook like, peaked and now is it on the way down? And like very quickly, advertisers were like, well, from a performance standpoint, no, it's still the best performing platform. And when we talk about Meta, Facebook and Instagram as its two major platforms to run ads on, Facebook has stopped growing. And we see like Facebook generally performs really well with Gen X and boomers. Like they're on Facebook all day. Like they haven't left the platform. They're still on there. It's still a good platform for them. For millennials, some are still on Facebook. A lot of them are on Instagram. Instagram is still growing. Like Instagram, I mean, we're talking about, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, certainly not necessarily like our core demographic that we're trying to hit, but like Instagram is still growing as a platform. It's still accumulating users. Facebook's kind of plateaued, but Instagram is still on the way up.
Yeah, which is, and that's an interesting distinction because it is really a dual platform, right? It's both
from an advertiser standpoint, like there's no difference between Facebook and Instagram. Like the way that Meta has set up their ad console for advertisers, like you have your creative and you have your whole campaign manager, and like it's you have to really dig in order to finally dive down into the placements where you can control if you want to appear on Facebook or Instagram. But we don't have a single client that we actually control those levers. It's just let Meta decide whether to show it on Facebook or Instagram, and it's going to pick the best performing placement.
So for people that want to learn more about working with Redblind Media, which is your company, where they could maybe, like myself, just hand the keys off to the online digital marketing aspect of their company and watch their numbers go up. Like in my case, it has totally been the case. I'd highly recommend using you guys. What is the best and easiest avenue for people to get in contact with you and to find out what that might look like having you work for them?
Yeah, I mean, I said just a little bit earlier, make sure you have a website, right? So redblindmedia.com is our site. You'll see a link there at the top for music schools. Since we've started working with music schools over the past couple of years, we've developed a pretty standard package for music schools that start at $1,500 a month for our services. And then we recommend that you spend at least $3,000 a month in media. So you have to be ready to commit to close to $5,000 a month in pushing advertising. But results are different for every school. But we typically see at that spend level, $5,000 a month, we're getting between like 5 and 10, sometimes more new students for these schools each month. And when you consider like the lifetime value of a student who is in there taking, 4 lessons a month and who might be taking lessons for, if this is a young kid, potentially years, the LTV, the lifetime value of a student far exceeds the cost to acquire them. And so we find for most of our schools, it's a very profitable exercise for them.
Yeah, and I mean that speaks to marketing budget and how much we should be spending, or how much you should be spending as a business owner on your marketing, which we should all be spending a percentage of our gross. I usually recommend between 8 and 12%, just depending on what stage you're in your business. Of course, if you're in a growth phase and you're just starting out, then that percentage might be much higher. But for the most part, that kind of falls in line with what music schools should be spending. So, okay, well that's super helpful. And again, can't recommend you highly enough, Kana. You've been a fantastic asset for our company, and you've helped us grow. And by the way, those numbers that you're sharing, 5 to 10 students a month, that's just through the online aspect of somebody's marketing spend, right? So like if you were also, doing other types of marketing offline, or maybe referrals or flyers or various other things, then that would just, of course, be added to that number. Exactly. But well, Kane, this was very, very informative. A lot of techie good info for somebody, for anybody really who's wanting to learn more about Google and Facebook or Meta and Instagram, and just kind of like the stages of that process of growing. I think this is definitely a podcast that you'll be able to go back and listen to a few times